I'm sorry. All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. It is 9 a.m. All council members are present, including town manager, deputy town manager, town attorney, and town clerk. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have two items on our management and planning meeting today. First is a presentation for shoreline protection of due diligence protection study, wave mitigation wall, and a talk about the CRA process. First, we have J.R. Evans here. Elizabeth,
Yes.
come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and make this presentation this morning. This is really a status update on our current shoreline protection due diligence study, and we wanted to provide an update on our current completed work, our findings, our the work that we're currently still completing, and the next steps to ultimately complete the study and provide you a deliverable report that outlines all the analysis, findings, and recommendations. With me today, I have Felicia Mumford. She's joined via Zoom. She is one of our senior project managers on the project. And Austin Wise, he is our senior coastal engineer as well, who is handling a lot of the technical aspects of the analysis. And with that, I'm going to transfer the presentation to Austin and let him go through the status of the work and current findings. Austin, are you on? Yep.
Hello.
There he is. And he will be sharing exhibits with you and going through those as well. And we also made sure to send those through Tracy so that they'll have to be part of the record for the meeting. Yeah. They're pretty large files. So, Austin, we're ready when you are.
For the files to be sent over email or just for them? The meeting is all.
Just a one link drive would be great.
Okay. I was having a hard time getting all those files to load. Quite large.
Can we just go on with the
Yep,
presentation?
yep,
We
let's
can
just
send
go-
those later?
Let's proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Elizabeth, did you want to kick it off or I'll just pull out the meeting agenda?
Yep, just pull up the agenda. And basically the status of work that's been completed. We've done the island-wide data collection and analysis. We actually took, as part of that process, we did a drone study where we have drone footage for the entire island to be able to get current conditions visually. And then we did site visits to verify certain components of specific properties just to help us basically inform those existing conditions and help with the coastal analysis. We've also done an island-wide spatial analysis, basically to document all the existing surge information that's available through FEMA, obviously all the flood zone information that's currently available, your coastal construction control line boundaries, and other jurisdictional boundaries to be aware of. We've also done a site-specific wave propagation modeling analysis, which also identified the criteria for doing these shoreline protection features. And that criteria basically is, what is the target top elevation that needs to be on those walls or structures so that it would mitigate the wave action enough to lower the risk of damage to landward structures. So Austin, if you want to go through some more details on that analysis and findings, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So, like Elizabeth said, we completed the island-wide data and spatial analyses. The first thing we looked at was the flood zones for the island as a whole, to get a good idea of ultimately how those flood zones change over the island and what would be priority areas or areas that would be most subject to damage. And so what we have here is the flood zones for the island as a whole. This is one of the exhibits that I will share. But basically you see that there are some VE zones, which are critical high velocity zones with large wave action. And then there's a red line here indicating the limit of moderate wave action. That demarcates waves that are greater than or less than 1.5 feet. So as you cross that line and get back into these areas, you're expecting smaller waves. The VE-AE boundary, you see here the VE and then the AE. The difference there is the wave heights are expected to be at 3 feet or greater or 3 feet or less in the AE zone. And all of this is relative to FEMA's identified conditions for a 100-year storm or a 1% annual chance storm. These conditions are really specific. They've identified water levels, wave conditions, things like that. Not every storm, of course, is going to be a 100-year storm, but that's the baseline that these flood zones are drawn upon. So that was the first thing we wanted to look at. The second in our data analysis was the maximum still water elevation. And I'm sorry, these might take a second to load. They're loaded with data. So this max still water elevation is the maximum storm surge elevation, essentially. Still water is, if you were to imagine a storm surge in a 100-year storm, this would be, if there were no waves on top of that, if the water level was just still, this is the elevation that it would be at. And then the waves are added on top of these elevations. So this is the baseline for what your surge and wave conditions are going to be drawn upon. Of course, the higher your still water elevation, the more extreme your water level is going to be, and likely the more extreme the damage could be in those areas. So what we found was something that was not terribly surprising to us. You see that the water levels, the still water levels in the center of the island are expected to be higher in a 100-year storm. And then as you get toward either end of the island, they start to taper off, they get a little lower.
Austin, would you mind, just because we can't see as closely, could you, like, what is the red, what is the yellow, what is just relative heights?
Sure. So the red is basically 11 and above.
Okay.
Once you get into green, you're getting to 10 or below. And that mid-range is essentially between 10 or 11.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
No problem. So, like I was saying, as you get toward either end of the island, you see it tapers off there. The red is the more extreme. And then especially down here toward Big Carlos Pass, you see it tapers off pretty quickly. That's as water is rushing through in a storm event. It's almost like a relief valve where water is able to rush into Estero Bay, and so it doesn't stack up the same as it would on a shoreline like this.
And it's also related to the shape of the shoreline too. So because of
Makes
that,
sense.
the middle of the island is more of a like a convex or concave shape. It draws the surge in to a higher level. And you'll see that where it's different, like on Sanibel Island, they have more of a convex shape, and so their still water, their surge elevations are lower
Because it goes around it.
for most of the island, yes.
So this is my favorite way to explain this. If we take a look at the shoreline from the perspective of a storm, right? If the storm is coming directly at the island, what you see with Estero Island is that it's shaped where it could catch all of the water, right? It's almost shaped like a bowl or a cup from this perspective. So in the center of the island, you're expected to have higher water levels because of that shape. The reason you're likely to see lower water levels on Sanibel Island is because it's shaped the exact opposite. So as the water is rushing in a storm surge, it can push around the island. It's not trapped with nowhere to go. Versus on Estero Island, as a surge comes in, it's trapped. It really doesn't have anywhere to go until it stacks up enough that it can go around. So that's the easy way to explain it. I know the orientation in a north-south direction doesn't really show that well, but once you look at it from the perspective of a storm and an actual storm surge, it starts to make more sense. All right. So that's the work we've completed for the data and spatial analysis. We also looked at some of the zoning and permitting criteria that would be located along the island. I won't go into too much detail on this because it's very site specific and we're still in pretty general stages. But we have created exhibits that show the zoning for different areas of the island and how ultimately any site-specific project would be affected by those criteria. And again, it has so much data, it takes a while to load. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and we use the zoning and land use parameters to identify target areas to look at, to do the wave propagation study, to do that site-specific analysis to determine what level of mitigation structure would be needed and to determine the criteria. And so we looked at where there was a more concentration of commercial uses, condominium uses, single-family home, and we looked at public spaces as well. So those were the key areas that we performed the site-specific studies on. And Austin will go into that detail.
And we focused this part of the analysis on the beachfront properties themselves. If we're able to fortify the beach, the properties behind it are going to reap the benefit of those improvements as well. So that's why we focused on the shoreline here.
Elizabeth, did I hear you right? So did you say you use zoning districts to determine how you would build the wall?
No, we use to identify target locations of where to do the more site-specific
Oh, okay.
analysis.
Got it.
To determine what the design criteria for the wall should be. Because our initial thought that it might vary a little bit as you go through the island. And also there's different opportunities that could be combined with the structure based on the adjacent land use. So like for commercial, you could do other, additional components of that structure could include sidewalk or pedestrian pathway, things like that. Whereas single family, you may not have that opportunity. But definitely for like the commercial resorts and condos, that would probably be a a good opportunity to provide those other types of ancillary uses
Sure.
with the structure.
Okay.
So we did the site-specific wave mitigation modeling for those 5 particular locations that are identified on the table on the first page. And basically, we identified what the required top elevation of that structure needed to be in order to effectuate a reduction in the wave height to go from a VE zone category to an AE zone category. And so each of those areas, the required elevation ranges from 7.5 to about 8.5 max. And a lot of these, it depends on the structure itself, but also what is happening on the landward side of the structure. You know, what is the elevation of the ground? If there's additional improved property, that plays a role in making sure that that wave can maintain the reduced height across the width of the studied area, if that makes sense.
And just for those that are paying attention out there,
Yeah.
when you see these numbers and you see 8 feet, that's not 8 feet on top of the sand.
No, that is 8 feet actual elevation. So a lot of Fort Myers beachfront areas are around between a 4 and a 5 feet elevation. So, Estero Boulevard itself, I think, is around a 5 average feet in AVD. And so they're talking a difference of like 3 feet would be from the top of the wall to that 5 feet. It would just be 3 feet.
Well, so I guess that's what, people are going to take that and think that there's going to be a 3-foot wall all the way down. If you looked at going back to the beach renourishment, the sand berm project, if I remember, that was around 6 feet is the top of that berm. How close in relation would this wall be to that sand berm?
Another 2 feet.
No, I meant
Oh.
in as
Oh.
far as aligning with it.
So we are targeting this structure to be landward of that.
Landward, okay.
We would not want to interfere with
With
the
the berm,
engineered beach
right.
and the dune plantings that have already been installed.
Okay.
This is a second line of defense, like we like to call it, your beach nourishment and, sand and vegetation is always going to be your first line of defense, and this is just an extra measure to help ensure that those waves are actually mitigated, because you're not going to be able to rely on that sand
Right.
indefinitely. It will be removed when storms come through. But this type of structure is meant to be designed to withstand the forces associated with a 100-year event.
And when you've had these installed in the past, and storms have come, have you noticed, at least it appears that the ones I've went and visited, it appears as though that berm that was there gets pushed up against this wall, and then that wall almost essentially disappears once that sand is pushed up there.
That can certainly happen, yes. We did have, I know one in Marco that we recently completed, and that's when I think they just completed it before Milton and Helene. And it performed very well and had no issues. But the idea is that the sand will help not only with the wave action, but also limit sand transport. So across
Right.
the
Estero Boulevard.
yeah. And that's one of the work in progress. What we're doing now, we're doing the hydrodynamic modeling to be able to visually demonstrate that aspect of the analysis.
Very cool.
Yep, so these are the required top elevations. So again, depending on what existing ground is, it could be anywhere from a 2 to 3 foot difference in, from the top of the wall to ground elevation. Austin, do you have anything to add?
And that's relative to the ground elevation that's either existing or has recently been completed with the nourishments. That's not to say that you couldn't do additional, nourishment and bring that ground elevation to closer match the wall.
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunities there. The nourishment that's out there, it serves a really good purpose, especially for those smaller storms, and it's critical to have that. And to bolster it in addition to this wall would be honestly the best case scenario for wave mitigation on Estero Island.
So do you want to go into the, do you have more to go into on the coastal, on the wave modeling, or do you want to go into the work in progress?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you there.
Sorry, are you done with the wave mitigation modeling section?
Yes. Did we want to discuss any of the site-specific modeling that we did, or do we want to jump to the hydrodynamic?
I think we can jump to the hydrodynamic.
Actually, Elizabeth, I'd like you guys
Oh.
to talk a little bit about in more
Okay.
detail about site specific, like you did with us
Okay.
a couple of weeks ago.
Yep, let's
Thank you.
go through our site-specific locations, Austin.
Okay. Awesome. So I may bring the agenda back in periodically to show the area that I'm speaking about. So this first one that I'm going to talk about is going to be Times Square. It's representative, of course, of a commercial area on the island. And we found that an elevation of 8 feet NAVD would support successful wave mitigation and revision to the flood zones in that area. So this is a very preliminary look. This is just something that we drew up to provide the concept. It's
Is
not
it-
anything that's been like finalized or anything like that.
Is there any way to expand this? I mean,
Yeah.
it's impossible to see what you're even talking about.
He can zoom in.
Sure.
I mean, on the screen, on our screen, is there a way to expand it? We've got an 85-inch screen and we're looking at a 45-inch picture. I mean, that's helpful. At least we can
Maybe.
get an idea.
Get rid of the thumbnails.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just expand the screen. Not that we don't like seeing you guys up there, but we'd like to see what you're showing us too. Yeah, I don't know if it's on our end or,
It would be on our end.
Is it on our end?
well, keep going.
The
It just,
Zoom call is-
yeah, that's, yeah. We're sending in the Swiss Army knife. You can continue on. I just wanted to, you zoomed it in, so at least it's a little easier to see.
Okay. So I'll cut in as close as I can get. So this is really just a preliminary look at something that could be put out there. It could be rearranged. But the key for any wave mitigation.
Austin, if you could hold up just for 1 second, if we can take like maybe a 1 to 2 minute break. If I can, each of the counselors and the mayors, if you go to our YouTube page in the interim, if you go to the Town of Fort Myers Beach YouTube page and pull up this presentation, you can pull it up on your screen. We haven't received the whole presentation. I know it's going to take a while to get
Yeah.
through because it's so dense, but if we can just take a
Sure.
minute, if you pull up our YouTube presentation right now for this, you can see it much better. Thanks for the pause, Austin. Just give us a minute.
No problem.
Just type in Town Fort Myers Beach YouTube. Thanks for the pause, Austin.
You gotta mute your,
Make sure you mute it.
Oh, Will, you're good.
Okay, go ahead, Austin.
That works.
Okay.
All right. So in purple here,
Remember that.
these purple lines represent one possible configuration of a system of wave mitigation structures.
Okay, go ahead, Austin.
It's not anything that is final or anything like that. It's just an idea, and it's put here for the sake of showing the concept. The important part of this message is that this purple line needs to be continuous if you were looking from the beach, but discontinuous so that you can get beach access. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but you see the overlapping breaks here. That allows people to come in, and it actually allows the surge to come in. What we're doing here is not stopping the surge. The really important thing to focus on is that we're breaking the waves, we're not stopping the surge. The surge, it's not something that's feasible to stop, it's just not reasonable. But by breaking the wave action, we can protect the property behind it very well. So these breaks in the wall allow surge to propagate through, but it also allows people access in and out, to access the pier or the public beach or parks or anything like that. But if you were to stand on the beach and look, the wall would look continuous, and that's really important because you want to make sure that the waves can't get through in any specific location. So the waves will see this and be mitigated. They'll be broken in any given location because of these overlaps, but the surge and people walking will be able to still get through the wall.
And Austin, what is that black dotted line, and what is that purple dash dotted line that's the furthest down on the bottom?
Gotcha. So those are, one of them is a PFD. It's a primary frontal dune that's been identified by FEMA. It's something that we disagree with FEMA on, frankly. A primary frontal dune is not something that realistically exists on Fort Myers Beach. It's something that provides protection to the beach in a 100-year storm, and clearly that's not the case. It's pretty flat out there. A PFD is something I actually have a pretty good example of what a PFD actually looks like. This looks nothing like Fort Myers Beach. This is a primary frontal dune up in Anastasia State Park by St. Augustine. But needless to say, the PFD has been delineated by FEMA, and it's a regulatory feature that we will need to work around or work with as we implement any sort of wave mitigation structure. Then the other pink dash line is the CCSL. It's a regulatory line. It's coastal construction setback line. Most of the island, we might be able to set the wave mitigation wall behind it. In some cases, we might want to look in front of that line, but that's on a really site-specific basis.
That's the original 1978 line,
Right.
original
black
CCCL,
one.
now referred to as the SL for setback.
So is the requirement in this case to put, if your illustration there is obviously well behind that CCCL line, is that a design choice, or is that where you get the best results for that section?
It's a design choice. You can change the location of the wall. If I was to redraw this,
The only reason I ask is just in this illustration, I
Yes.
mean, that's going to go right through the middle property owner's property, which they're probably not going to be very happy with.
Right. I think this,
Right.
we align this to be on the west side of, or the
South side.
south side of Estero Boulevard, the pedestrian corridor. Only because we thought it would be, it was a great way to help protect public infrastructure as well, because you've got utilities and drainage within that corridor, as well as the bulk of the Times Square commercial properties. We do realize that there are properties located seaward of that proposed line. And we're not saying that the wall could not be, the structure could not be out that far, although we think it would be a pretty heavy lift with permitting.
Okay.
I think there is an existing
As in,
structure out there.
as in FDEP permitting, is that where you?
No, DEP,
FDEP.
yes, through the state.
Interesting.
It helps if there's an existing wall in the area that we could reference. But again, and the wall, the top of the wall elevation may need to be a little higher further seaward you go because the waves are higher.
Sure.
Yes. So we really laid this out, more of our optimal design recommendation for the location.
Okay.
Not to say that other locations cannot be considered, but for this purpose, that's where we put it.
And so if these structures were to be moved inland, like Elizabeth was saying, your required wave mitigation height, the elevation of the top of that structure could be a little lower. And the farther you go out on the beach, the higher that structure has to be, just because the conditions are more extreme. And the wave has to be taller and stronger, or the structure has to be taller and stronger to mitigate those waves. So I'll switch now to a location that's representative of the single-family area. So this was just a random address that we selected that looked like it best represented the surrounding area of single-family homes. The required elevation here was 8.25. And we located this wall essentially just within the CCSL. It's also roughly around the location of the property lines for most of the properties in this area. And it is seaward of that FEMA PFD. But what this ultimately does is, of course, it protects the structures, it breaks the waves down, but it also allows us to revise the flood zones, which could provide a pretty beneficial impact to any of those single-family homeowners. So this is a lot more simple of a configuration, just because it's not a robust commercial area, it's singular homes. Ideally, this structure would be continuous. That would be the best means of protection. Of course, there would have to be breaks in it here and there for access and to allow storm waters to propagate. And what we would also do, and what we'll talk about later, is the hydrodynamic modeling that we're working on to focus on the velocities and different effects of that storm as the storm surge propagates over the island, to ensure that by placing the structure or series of structures that we're not adversely impacting other properties. So that's something that we're still working on, but something that's going to be a primary focus as we move forward.
Quick question before you move on. With this area, you know, we often talk about how this could have an effect on the immediate property owners if it changes the zoning, the flood zoning maps.
Yes.
Does it then also change or potentially change the flood zoning map moving further inland? So say if you were in an AE, could you potentially go to an A, or is it just specific on the velocity areas?
The biggest change would be from velocity to an AE. The other properties would remain in AE. There may be the potential of a lowering of the base flood elevation. But for the most part, the most impactful is going to be
The
from B to A,
Right,
with
okay.
a potential lowering of like maybe a foot of the base flood elevation for some of the closer properties.
Okay.
So, but there's no way to remove any property from the AE zone. It could also, I don't know that we've looked at this, but you know, the goal of the wall is to mitigate wave action, so it gets down to waves that are less than 3 feet. I don't know that that will change where the limb wall boundary is, that limit of moderate wave action. There could be a potential for adjustment to that line, but I think you would need a more comprehensive improvement to do that.
Okay.
Elizabeth, or Austin, either, when you do it in front of a property like this, and let's assume that the neighboring properties also buy in and they also want to build
Do
it,
it,
and you
yep.
do have a contiguous line. I understand it's potentially 3-4 feet that's exposed. How do you get access over that? Can you actually build into the structure steps or some of, because I noticed you, at the Times Square example, you had the breaks where it was staggered.
Yes.
And they were kind of, one was facing the other to
To overlap.
show, overlap and show a break to the water as it's coming in. But for access, do you have to do the staggering, or can you create concrete stairs going down? I don't know what it is, something like that.
I would believe there is the opportunity to do like a walkover. It would have
Okay.
to be, I don't know that we can put, we can make it out of concrete that would go like on the seaward side of the wall. It would probably maybe
right.
be a typical boardwalk.
Boardwalk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can, we can provide breaks. It would just mean there'd be need to be an offset that property owner would be okay with.
Be
Yeah,
agreeable
to
to.
make sure they
Okay.
have access. And I want to make a point that the wall doesn't have to be straight. It can be, it can have shape to it. It could be curvy. There's a lot of options for it. So I wanted to throw that out there.
And you have some pictures of examples of that,
Yes.
don't you?
Yes.
Can you guys show any of those? I don't know if you guys, you should
Yeah. I
pull
think-
them up when we
Yeah.
met, shall I Clearwater? and
Yes,
such, Yeah.
yes.
Elizabeth, you would need breaks at the public beach accesses.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
You do
Or
something
ways for
similar
the-
like Times
yes.
Square,
Yes,
where you'd have an additional.
exactly. And in those examples that we've shown in other presentations, those breaks are accommodated in those areas, like for Clearwater, and Austin's showing it now.
So this is Clearwater. This is a similar structure. You can see that there's breaks in the wall for wave access, or not wave access, beach access. There's also secondary structures behind it that could be incorporated as well. But you see the configuration is a little funky. That helps to provide overlap to incoming waves. And I've got some other examples that can show that even better, because there's still some breaks in here, and they do have secondary walls to protect from those openings.
Yeah, that wall that's in the pedestrian corridor right there, closer to the building, that is what I was referring to, so.
It's
Got
really
it.
helpful.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect example of that overlap and how it can be curved a little bit. So if you're a wave coming in from the ocean, you can't really get past this. Waves don't just walk around structures like people do. So this provides the protection while also allowing access.
Had some architectural design to it, too.
Yeah, makes a difference.
That sure does make a difference.
And if we want, I can go through a couple other examples. This one is Hollywood Beach. So they have some pretty wide openings. Of course, those openings are not where there are structures. So the structures themselves are still protected. But for the beach accesses, they have pretty wide openings. They've incorporated it into their boardwalk. And they have bike lanes and things like that. We were to go down a little bit, you'll see some like live music, you have chairs out there. I think pretty similar to the waterfront by Times Square. And then if we go to Fort Lauderdale, theirs is it's a little more artistic than the one at Hollywood Beach. They use it for parking lots, but they also use it for recreational spaces. Here's a perfect example of the overlap that you have here. So people can walk down here, but if you're a wave coming from the ocean, it has no path around the wall. It has to go through it and it has to be broken. And then it starts to look different for different areas. Like that was a pretty dense area that I was just showing, but as we get further north, we get into some public areas, some condominiums, things like that. And the wall kind of fits into the landscape as you go to different areas. And most people, as they're visiting a place like this, they see this as a seating feature or a structure that delineates the difference between the beach and the walkway. They don't see it as a big flood mitigation structure. It's been incorporated nicely in this place, in this case. And they added some public features like bike racks and things like that. That is all of my examples for now. I'm sure I can find some more if we need to. And then I'll come back to the site-specific study. I'll roll through a couple of these last ones.
Maybe Austin, as you guys continue to move forward at the next presentation, if you could have some pictures of the ones you did at Bonita, the Marco,
Yep.
the more, the closer ones that you were referring to, so people get a better understanding of
Yes.
locally what it could potentially look like.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Those were great, though. I think people
Okay.
need to see those to understand that it's
visuals.
not just a seawall down the
No.
beach.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I think when people think of an idea like this, they might think of this. This is
Yes.
Daytona. This is not what we're proposing here. The state doesn't like to see this built anymore. For anybody that's worried that this is what we're thinking of doing,
It's not.
it's not the case.
That's an important point to make.
It is, yes. We were really just trying to like trip up the wave action. And in some of the lower interval storms, the structure will actually probably prevent the surge from reaching. But again, we're talking about lower level surge
Helene
events,
type
like
storms, yeah.
a 10-year storm,
Yeah.
or a 25-year level event. Where the surge might be at like an elevation 5 or 6, just over the beach. Then these structures would help mitigate from that surge propagating, yep. Go ahead, Austin.
No, that's a good point. So this is a part of our study. It's Newton Park. It's representative of a public space. So the structure, since this is more toward the center of the island, we found that the structure needed to be a little taller. The center of the island, of course, has higher still water elevations, like I showed previously. So this being at an 8.5, this is a case where you might have a 4 to 5 foot exposure on the beach side. So this might be a case where there needs to be a little bit of sand added here. Now, I don't know how accurately these contours reflect the recent upgrades to the beach with the nourishment and the dune plantings and everything like that.
They don't.
Specifically at Newton Park. So you might already be looking at not such a great exposure. But
Chad, isn't this area kind of, you don't have to just nod, isn't this area kind of where they built it up to that common 6 foot across there? So
Yeah.
these numbers aren't really accurate as to what is currently out there.
Right.
You
We
just shake
tried
your
to
head, okay.
incorporate the data everywhere that we had it, but it looks like this location in particular just doesn't have the data supporting the nourishment up at 6 feet.
Well, maybe we can get the current data from Mike Poff to these folks
Yeah.
to be able to help with their,
Chad Schutz, town staff. Yes, we're doing an annual profile survey soon,
okay.
so we'll have that.
Thank you, Chad. And with Newton, there is an existing structure
Seawall,
there
yeah.
along the interface between the park and the active beach.
I think it extends pretty much down that entire side of the beach, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Down past Publix and,
Yes. And we actually went out and got current elevations of that structure. And I think the top elevation is around, Austin, you'll have to correct me, but I think it's between 4.5 and 5 feet already. So
So could we
Can you
just add on
utilize that?
top of that, or
No,
we'd
it's a
have
different
to?
structure.
the goal, well, as part of the analysis would be to verify the structural capacity of that existing wall. In many cases, if it's the same as we encountered on Hickory Island, where they have an existing buried wall, pretty much the same condition, that wall was strong enough to be able to add a structural cap to it and still withstand the 100-year forces. So my hope that the wall on Hickory Island was a concrete panel wall that extended about 9-10 feet below grade. So I would think that this is a similar structure.
Would you have to analyze the entire wall or just portions of the wall?
Just portions, just to get an understanding of the makeup of it.
Okay.
But ideally, we'd be able to add a structural cap to it. And as Austin mentioned, maybe do additional mitigation with some scour protection in front and sand. But that would be the idea.
Elizabeth, when you speak of scour protection, is that something that will be in front of all the walls?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said scour
Yes.
protection. Will that be in front of anywhere we add walls?
Mainly, it's been where we have to demonstrate the design accounts for protection on the landward side of the wall to make sure that the material behind the wall is going to be
Right.
protected. In our recent designs, we've incorporated what we call a splash pad, which it could be representative of like a sidewalk or pedestrian path. There are many ways to handle that, either with a concrete pad is the most simplest way, or additional rock behind the wall, just to help.
I'm thinking more on the seaward side.
Yep. That's a good point. And Austin, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I think
Because some of
that's
that
something
damage
would
seems
be-
to occur on that side where
Yes.
it just gets worse and worse over time.
Yep.
So I'm concerned about that on the seaward side, Austin.
Is your concern related to damage to buildings, or is it scour? What's the nature of it?
Yeah, just where, the sand erodes on the seaward side and causes issues.
Gotcha.
You know,
Yeah,
the
so-
negative things that I read about seawalls all talk about what's happening on the seaward side. So are we addressing that, considering it? I'd like you to at least speak to it now or the next time we meet.
Absolutely. So I would prefer to see scour protection on the front side of all of the walls that we build. Sometimes we face difficulty with that because of restrictions for sea turtle nesting. Sometimes those rocks are considered obstructions to sea turtle nesting and they're not allowed. So the alternative to that is to create a stronger wall with a deeper panel. And then if you ever do have a storm where the beach is scoured out, just replacing that sand. So it really has to do with the specifics of the site and what could be allowed in terms of permitting. But personally, I agree with your thoughts that if we can add riprap in front of those walls, that it's something that we can do. It's just not always the case for permitting reasons.
Ideally, we would
plantings.
put rock and then cover it with sand so that there would be rock to support the walls, or to add in that scour protection. But we would still need to have sand on top of it to make sure there was enough depth for turtle nesting season.
Okay.
That's what we had to do for Bonita Beach Club. There is rock there, but it's buried, so there is some level of protection.
That's all I'm asking for, is
Yes.
that you address those concerns
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
speak to them when we
Yes.
have the opportunity for the different sites.
Yes, ma'am. And then
Thank you.
for areas like Times Square, the scour isn't so much of a concern because you're in the developed area of the island, so there's already hard surfaces
Right.
that provide protection for scour
Thank you, Elizabeth.
conditions. Go ahead, Austin.
All right. So this is the last location that we studied out on a site-specific basis. And it's an interesting one. So this area, there's a coastal barrier resource area designated here. And you see that there's a very wide open beach. And so what that presents is an opportunity for ecological restoration.
Castle Beach.
And that restoration could also support wave mitigation and ultimately even a map revision if it was robust enough. It's not something that we considered for a lot of the other areas of the island because the beach is a bit thinner. There's not really the space to do the type of robust restoration that would be necessary. But here, there is that space, so it's something I wanted to at least bring up. Of course, I'm sure these property owners would need to be on board for anything like that in terms of their views. There might be a pretty significant dune added here in a restoration project with some vegetation. So it'd be important to make sure that everybody's on board with it. But I think it presents a really nice opportunity, not just for wave mitigation, but for a more comprehensive ecological restoration and maybe even an educational opportunity for any surrounding schools or firms that want to look at how best to do ecological restoration. So it's just something I wanted to throw out there. If it's not something that's preferred, because it probably would be a little on the expensive side, it's still possible to do the wave mitigation structure. Now, since this is on the south side of the island, the south end of the island, the still water elevation is a bit lower because it's toward the end. And so we see that there's a limit to the wave mitigation structure elevation of 7.5. And when I say limit, that just means that that's the height necessary for the same result as we are seeing elsewhere. And so it's a little lower what's necessary here. And you can actually see here, I think this may be the emergency berm that's reflected in the topography. We get elevations even up to 5.5. So this structure has an exposure of only 2 feet in this case.
Austin, when you said significant dune, what are you thinking? What's significant to you?
You'd probably want it to match some of the surrounding ecological areas. So you can see that it's got lagoons, it's got beach runnels, short little dunes in between the lagoons. I'm not saying add a lagoon here, but to match that topography and maybe even make it a little more robust, we might be looking at a series of 5-foot dunes rather than just one. It really comes down to ecologically and ultimately how the town would like to see it done. There's not any right or wrong way to do it as long as you're taking into account the parameters that we're trying to focus on.
Thank you.
Some things you need to keep in mind there, that what you were just talking about looks like the critical wildlife area to me. And then also in that area is nesting for birds. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely. So anything that would be done here, if it was a priority in terms of restoration, would take those things into account. I just wanted to highlight that since there is such an open area, that there is an opportunity here to do something like that.
Thank you.
All right. last example I had was related to this particular site. This is an area where they actually did have a lot more space. This is over on the East Coast. And so you can see that they did do some restoration, and some dune enhancement, some plantings, and then they also maintain some open space. They have some parks. They ultimately still have the wave mitigation wall or some form of wall or retaining wall. So this is by no means what I'm saying that we should do here, but it's a good example. It's something that could be pulled from. Yeah, anyway. All right, so that concludes the site-specific studies that we've done so far. Those are meant to be representative of larger areas for the island as a whole. So I'm open to any questions for that. I think we might wait till the end to go through it in detail and questions. But I wanted to highlight some of the work that's still to be done on our part. We're currently working through some cross sections for the island, or for each of these areas. So of course you're looking at a plan view of what it would look like from the air. But if we're actually out there exploring the island, we're not looking at it from the air. So we want to provide some cross sections to really show in detail what we're proposing and what could be done out there in terms of the wave mitigation structures, different strategies in different locations, things like that. So we're still working on those conceptual cross sections. A couple other items that we're working through are identifying funding opportunities and strategies, then an implementation plan for how this wave mitigation feature would be, how it could be built, and then identifying opportunities for the north end of the island. The last time we spoke, we noticed that the very north end of the island is quite exposed, and it actually has a V zone crossing the entire island. So anything that would be applied to that north end of the island might need to be applied to both sides. You may need not just a wave mitigation structure on the beachfront, but also on the backside by Bunch Bay, San Carlos Bay, facing Bunch Beach, sorry. And then finally, I think Elizabeth can probably speak more to this, but we are working in parallel for some other private property owners. We have a couple contracts working with them to look at the same thing on a site-specific basis for their specific properties.
Yeah, so we are assisting a couple of property owners in Times Square at implementing their own wave mitigation structure for their particular property, and then another property that's close adjacent to Lani Kai. So we wanted to be transparent about that and let y'all know that those are in the works. And I can field any questions you may have about that.
I would assume you would integrate whatever designs they're gonna have into what would potentially could be a town project
Yes,
as well.
Yes. I think the positive aspect of this is if you've got the same, our team is working on
Right.
those projects, it's gonna, if they go through, it's gonna look and feel the same. Like hopefully it would be a consistent, and ideally, I would love to have something more cohesive,
How close are you, Elizabeth, to having a project getting approved through the state to be able to get started, so people could actually see this?
Very close. I mean, on Outrigger, we, I mean, not, well, on Outrigger, we, 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 we put the pause on the state permitting just until I think we want to do it with the, hopefully the ultimate development plan. But we do have the approval from FEMA for that, the conditional approval that would basically change the flood zone once that structure is in place. So, the most recent state approval is going to be the one on Hickory Island. That one was approved, and it's built, and we're getting it certified here very soon. So,
Very good. Yeah, that would be the one to be able to see.
yeah, I know. And then I think we did mention it, the hydrodynamic modeling. I think that's going to be very interesting, and we'll have that ready for our next presentation. Be able to actually show you simulations of how the waves are behaving with the structures installed, and we'll be able to show that, basically that condition.
Both with the structure installed and without?
Yes,
Very good.
yes. I think that's very important, not only for y'all, but for the public to see that. Path forward. So we wanted to make sure you did not have any additional locations that you would like us to look at based on, compared to what we've already presented. I think what we've done to date is representative of the different major areas on the island and gives us a good understanding of the criteria needed for that mitigation structure. And as we move into looking at the conceptual cross-sections, basically the cross-sections will show a view extending from the Gulf, the active beach, the dune restoration activities that have occurred, the location of this wave mitigation structure, and the landward properties. So you can see it in perspective of what it would look like. But we could also consider opportunity for adding public spaces along with this with this structure. So that's the next items of discussion are in that vein of what other features could be provided in tandem with the structure. So again, the structure doesn't have to be ugly. It can be aesthetically pleasing. It can fit in the landscape of wherever portion of the island it's in. There's opportunities to add a pedestrian or multi-use path with it, like on the landward side. Obviously, it provides additional seating areas. And item D on the agenda, we put like a list of other public space priorities with a question of what is important.
This would be an interesting data point to put out to the
Yeah.
public to see,
Yeah.
if this goes forward, what would be important
Yep.
aspects for people to see.
Right. So I thought it would be good, maybe, I had the idea of maybe issuing a survey or something through social media to say, hey, what's important to you, the public, and kind of get a cross-section of what that is.
Well, this would be interesting as you go forward if you're dealing with property owners. I'm assuming you got to get their sign off to do some of this, to see if any of this, if they're going to want to participate in it.
Yeah.
What of these would be something they'd be willing to deal with, essentially?
Yes. I think there are obviously some key priorities, such as beach access, pedestrian multi-use paths, seating features, shade structures, bike racks. I think the last one, which, a public monitoring data point or high water mark post would be interesting. And also provide the town good data if it's something that could be recorded,
Yeah.
regularly.
I think the shade structures will be a popular one.
Yes.
Bike racks.
So moving into other discussion items, and these were discussion items that came out of our previous talk with Tracy, Will, and Frankie, just looking at, I think Austin alluded to this about the north end of the island, how it's really exposed from both sides of the Gulf and the bay, so that we would have to look at doing something on the Gulf side and on the bay side, as far as bolstering, being able to bolster the bay side and reduce those waves. And then we talked about potentially an opportunity at the public parking area near 1240 Estero Boulevard. I think the town has a small parking lot. It may be a good place to try. It's like a pilot project.
Well, it might be something if you're dealing with that property owner on the other side.
Yeah.
And the property owner on either side may want to partake in, so you get a bigger sample size
Yes.
compared to just that little sliver of land that we've got there.
Yep.
Might be something worth talking to them to see if, pilot program would
Yes.
make sense if they're going to do it anyway, that little section that we have.
Right.
I've talked to both those property owners, and both seem pretty much on board of wanting to be involved in this, so this might be the
I
opportunity to
agree.
reach out to them to say, hey, we're going to do this and mobilize, let's mobilize once and
Yeah.
cover
And
that entire area.
I did want to share the local university for Florida Gulf Coast University. They are actually studying a hybrid dune condition in their own school's work, where they've got more of a structural base and then have sand, have a sand dune on top, and they're very excited about this work that we're doing, and they would love to be able to, I think, be involved in an opportunity to have like a real rural study done, perform, so it might be a good opportunity to kind of show support for their educational program.
Sure.
They may want to help participate with data collection, stuff like that.
Good internship opportunities for data
Yes,
collection
yes,
for
yeah,
people
yeah.
writing theses.
Yeah. Because they've done a lot of work out just through their own studies. They've done different studies about nutrients in the Gulf and sea life and how that changes with all the wave action and hydrodynamic movement. So they've been very interested in what we're doing.
Would
So-
you need anything from us, Elizabeth, to allow them to get involved?
No, I mean, if you're okay with us talking to them, that would be great.
Yes.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of objections.
Yeah. I just thought it was a great opportunity to show a good
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Will?
relationship with the university.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, please do.
Keep us on the cutting edge, too,
Yes.
what works.
and Austin can attest, they're actually teaching this type of hybrid system in the other universities for coastal engineering as being the best approach to coastal flood mitigation, wave action mitigation. So I think that was pretty interesting. That's the latest approach. And Austin, you can speak more on that if you want.
Yeah, while I was at the University of Florida, one of the key things that we were discussing was, looking at the site holistically and then identifying, based on your limitations of space, if you can't do a full restoration like we talked about for that south end of the island, what can you do? And what comes up more often than not is a hybrid solution where you're using nature-based features, you're using maybe a sand dune, you're using some plantings, you're using rock for riprap, but you're also incorporating that into a hardened structure because you don't have the space for that natural feature to take the full force of a storm. So you're kind of combining the two, getting the benefit ecologically and recreationally and all the other ways of a nature-based feature, but still incorporating a hardened structure for the purpose of actually, protecting from one of those larger storm events. Because those dunes are really good at absorbing the impact of a smaller storm event, the the lower surges of 5 or 6 feet, the waves from storms like that. But once you get into a larger event like a Hurricane Ian or something similar to it, those dunes are, I mean, they're washed away for the most part. And so you need something to reinforce that, that's hardened, that's gonna withstand it. And that's what the hybrid feature is supposed to do, and that's why it's been, with how many larger storms we're seeing, that's why it's being taught, you know, if you can incorporate those nature-based features, always do that. But the hybrid solution to protect against larger events seems to be preferred, at least from an academic standpoint.
Well, Austin and Elizabeth, I might add to that, on your section D, work to complete, identify funding opportunities and
Yes.
strategies. If you could work with the universities on our behalf, you know, they get grants as well
Okay.
and funding opportunities. So maybe we can piggyback off of some of their fundings to our benefit, our mutual benefit, I should say.
Mutual benefit, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can certainly explore that opportunity.
Thank you.
All right, and then I think the last, Elizabeth, it looks like you were about to go on.
Yeah, I was wrapping up and just to open it up to any other questions that the counselors may have.
Counselor King, any questions?
Yeah, I've been wanting to get this answered for a while, but you keep talking about a 100-year event. Are we talking Ian, or is Ian a 500-year event?
The short answer for Fort Myers Beach is it was a little stronger than a 100-year event. I haven't identified, you know, exactly if it's a 200 or a 400 or a 500, but it was stronger than a 100-year event. I can tell you that for the majority of Fort Myers Beach.
Thank you.
Scott?
Keep taking all my questions. I'm good. Thank you guys so much. Very informative.
Thank you very much.
Rebecca?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Both.
John?
It's been really informative. Thank you very, very much. I think we need to really get this out to the publics, because my impression was the seawall, and now I've learned it can be so much more than that. And and I also, I just have to think that if we were to harden the beach accesses, then there is potentially a stronger incentive for the adjoining properties to then continue to build out this resilience feature, because whatever is not protected is going to be more exposed. And I hate to put that sort of that negative pressure on them, but it really, I think it would help get a lot more buy-in from properties up and down the beach. You know, I really do.
We saw that the last couple storms.
Yeah.
I mean, just driving down where the water was coming in was where,
If
The
you're,
berm wasn't there.
if you're
Berm
not
wasn't there.
there,
Didn't
you're
get a berm.
scoured, and that's a shame. We don't want to see that anywhere, so.
Yeah, I think to your point, John, education is key. You know, we just recently had a town hall that was very successful. Maybe if we're working with some of these students, we could have some sort of town hall where people could understand what this hybrid means, working with Turtle Time, working with people. So when we get to a point where we have to potentially make a decision on this, they're fully aware of what we're talking about. Because to John's point, there are still a lot of people out there that just think this is a concrete wall like you showed in Daytona, where they're
Right.
gonna have to take an elevator to get down to the beach, and that is not the case. And how there's so many designs, and now when you're talking about this hybrid, how you can really bring ecological into it as well, I think that would really pique a lot of interest to hopefully make Chad's job a lot easier down the line when he has to get people to sign off on potentially doing this behind their house again. As we saw after the storms, when their yards were filled with sand that didn't want the berm, I think Chad could testify that his phone probably rang quite a bit more than it probably did right after Ian to sign those petitions. So
Yes.
the more education we can get out in front of these people, and the more we can have them come in and ask questions of you or some of these students that can understand what does this hybrid look like, and how can it work behind my house or behind my, Islands End or wherever you live along the beach, I think that'll make our jobs a lot easier as we get towards the end and a lot more buy-in.
Yes.
John, you have another question?
Yeah, thank you. Your characterization of Ian helped to spur a couple other thoughts. I'm a visual person, and I was on the island for Ian, Helene, and Milton. Would you be able to classify what you would consider Helene and Milton as versus a 100-year storm, or?
Yeah, so in terms of swell at least, still water elevation, I believe Helene and Milton were closer to 25 or 50-year storms. Just based on FEMA's, what they've published in terms of the statistical analysis. So I'm pretty sure, I'm going off the top of my head here, the high water marks for Ian around this part of the island were about 12 feet. And that's based on still water elevation, those high water marks. So that's what I'm saying, that it looked like it was a bit higher than a 100-year storm. It's because it's higher than, 12 feet higher than this 11 that FEMA's designated as a 100-year storm. But Helene and Milton being, 5 or 6 feet of surge, those are, statistically closer to a 25 or 50-year storm.
Okay, that helps. Thanks so much, and thank you for today and all your hard work.
Of course.
Yeah, one last question. You said that word there that I don't think a lot of people understand. When you say still water mark, that's still
wave.
water. That's not the wave action on top of that water line, correct?
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and how would this mitigation wall affect anything above that still water line?
Austin, I'll let you
wall-
take that. It's all about the column of the water, but go ahead.
Sorry, Elizabeth, what?
Different metric.
I'll let you take
Yeah,
that
I'm just
explanation
curious if it
about how
would.
the,
Yeah.
how the structures mitigate the wave impact based on a still water of 11 plus a wave height on top.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so if you have a still water here of 11, you're likely to have a wave of 4 to 5 feet on top of that 11. Now, there's a certain portion of that wave that's actually below the still water elevation, and so I'll kind of skip over that, the more technical part of that. But your base flood elevation, and we actually have it, overview. So we know that the still water elevation at Times Square, for example, is 11, but your base flood zone, your BFE, is 15. So that 15 is what's accounting for the extra wave action on top of that. What we're proposing to do is a wave mitigation wall that breaks the waves that are contributing that additional 4 feet. So if you're breaking that wave from 4 feet down to 1.5 feet, of course you have 2.5 feet less of your base flood elevation. So instead of a VE zone 15, you might be looking at an AE 12.
And can you explain why the wall reduces the wave height?
Sure.
Okay.
So the wall, the waves that are coming in a storm are what we call depth limited. So a column of water, say you have 5 feet of water, it can only support a wave that's equivalent to about 80% of that depth. So if you have 5 feet of water, the maximum wave that you can have physically is 4 feet. So if you put an obstruction there that sticks up an additional 2 or 3 feet, you're reducing the actual depth limited, the limit to what the wave can actually be.
Yep.
So.
Significant.
Exactly. So if you're bringing that wave, that 4-foot wave down to 1 foot because you're increasing the elevation, that's kind of the mechanism that causes the wave to break.
Yep.
The energy of that wave is dispersed across the entire depth of water. It's not just the top of the water. And so by providing an obstruction there to it, you're causing it to break and dissipate the energy.
It's the same as when you see the waves breaking on the shoreline. It's because the depth of the water is decreasing. This structure is just doing the
energy's-
same
sure.
thing, but your column of water is a lot deeper, because we're looking at it at a 100-year level.
And that would have an effect on both coming in and going out then, wouldn't it? I mean, in theory, because if you're less energy coming in, that's less energy going out, which will reduce that scouring, I think, that you're talking about, which we saw like at Newton Park behind the wall.
Right,
Yes,
There was no sand
It
left,
was
it just
gone.
sucked it all out.
yeah.
So this would help with that,
yes.
okay.
That's an important point, to be clear with public.
I have another question,
Yeah,
if I could. Especially for commercial properties where you've been engaged, and I can understand exactly why, what is the process and how do you get that predetermination that you're going to be able to move the FEMA line? How do you actually have confidence that what you engineer and are going to build is actually going to result in a movement of the line?
So we put together the analysis, which is very similar to what we've done with this project. There's also a structural analysis that is done for the actual structure, and there's FEMA requires that particular points of the design are met in order to, basically, this will be a certified structure in the eyes of FEMA, meaning it is a certified flood mitigation structure. And so the design really has to make sure that it looks at the maximum water level condition, to see what the maximum force is going to be on that structure. If you have water on one side and no water on the other, and vice versa. It asks about the scour potential and protection of the material on the landward side. So there's several components that are looked at for that structural design. So once those are met, and in our coastal analysis to actually demonstrate what the flood zones would be revised to, all that's looked at from a technical review through FEMA's contractors. They hire engineers to review these types of applications.
Okay.
So we go through a pretty rigorous review with that team. And then, once their technical review is satisfied, they prepare what they call CLOMR. It's a conditional letter of map revision acceptance document, and it basically is it's a FEMA form letter that says, because of this proposed coastal mitigation structure, the flood zones can be revised once that structure has been installed. There's an operation and maintenance plan that goes with the structure.
Yep.
So to make sure that it's
Stays
regularly
that way.
inspected and maintained. So there's several different steps to go through. The application is also submitted to the town or to the local jurisdiction because they need to be aware of the proposed revision. And there's actually a section on the application for the town to sign, or the local jurisdiction to sign, acknowledging that they've been notified of it.
So that brings to mind a statement that Austin made about I can't remember which berm it was, but either one of the berms that he showed a picture of
Yeah.
being very significant, and yet FEMA stating that they thought we had a primary berm or whatever.
Right.
I guess one of my concerns would be not to engineer and build something so that it satisfies FEMA, but more importantly, that it satisfies the conditions on the ground. And be,
You don't trust they're aligned?
no, I'm suggesting that we build resiliency as opposed to build to minimum standards. That's what I'm trying to suggest.
I think it makes sense, but I don't know that you could have one without the other. I mean, I see, you could build it stronger
'Cause
than what
one gives
FEMA
you the okay,
recommends,
right.
or more resilient than what FEMA recommends, but I don't see any way of building it less than what FEMA
No,
recommends.
No, you're
agree
good.
with you, sir.
Weren't suggesting that.
Yeah, I think it's our opinion that if you're going to invest in that structure, that it
Make
be
it right.
at least to
Make it
that
right,
level. we can always go more, but
Okay, we're aligned. Thank you.
thank you.
Elizabeth, I have another question. Would you be able to provide the town with the cost, at least a range, of maintaining, the requirements to maintain the wall, so that that was something we would be able to budget, figure out how we would do, just as a range, I'm sure, because that would be, our next question is, we might get it
Yes.
paid for, how do we make sure we keep it?
Yes.
And then the other.
Well, I think to piggyback with that, the grants available potentially that could go along with the maintenance schedule of it, which, you know, Chad's a wizard at finding those, or it seems to be anyway.
Yeah, money that we invest, that we could use the proceeds of the investments to pay for the maintenance, ongoing
Yeah, again,
maintenance.
the education, having all avenues open is so people can understand that it's not, you're building this wall or you're building this mitigation wall, and now it's gonna cost you X amount of dollars every year to maintain. Because that will be the next question.
That
We're
will
seeing
be,
that in
yes.
other
Right.
jurisdictions over a flag, so we certainly don't want to go down the same path.
Understood.
And then I'd like to make one other suggestion, just for your consideration, but as you talk to the universities, I'd love to see if they could have students on all sides. I don't know if there's more than two, but people who are thinking about it from the environmental perspective, that they are a team, and then those who are thinking of it from a mitigation side, so that they are doing the same kind of cross-analysis between each other and having debates that we may find ourselves doing with our residents.
You mean when?
When?
Yeah.
Yeah, when? If that makes sense. So it's not so lopsided that it's like, this is all good. You know, have the students
Yeah.
kind of take a different role.
It definitely has to be a balance,
Mhm.
and that's the key.
That'll help us
objective.
address the questions we will have. Will have.
We'll have.
Yeah,
Chad will.
Chad will have.
Any other questions for
Great
Elizabeth?
presentation.
Thank
So
you.
Elizabeth, what's the next steps from here as far as when we'll see you again?
So we're going to wrap up our modeling efforts, and then our, the conceptual cross-sections, the grant funding opportunity, put together the final deliverable. I'm projecting that we'll be complete, and Austin, don't get mad. Probably I would say by the end of May.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, so early June is, I think, our target.
That's what we're going for.
Yep.
The hydrodynamic modeling is pretty detailed, so
Yes.
it could be a little longer, but we're really pushing for June, end of May.
Yes.
Maybe on the next, just an idea, maybe council wants to consider, or staff wants to consider, at your next presentation, if it is another M&P, we maybe change the structure a little bit to make it more of a town hall, so people could ask questions.
Love it, love it.
You know, try to kill two birds with one stone. We get the presentation, but maybe there's people in the audience that have questions that you could help us answer, as opposed to, we'll get back to you.
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah,
thought.
Yeah, well, that was one of the notes I had down, Mr. Mayor, is public information event. If we can tie it in with an already scheduled event, we'll do that and invite the public, invite different academia and media and so forth, so we can get all the sides and all issues out there. And also, I'll make note now for everybody that is watching now, but even if for the council, this is on YouTube. It's available, this presentation today, for everybody to watch. We'll send out, advertisement. We'll push out media, push out to our residents and so forth here, so they can watch today's presentation as well, and to be informed. So,
Great. Thanks,
Okay.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, Austin.
If you don't mind, I have one more photo I want to show.
Okay.
Sure. Visual's good.
So this better answers the question that was asked last to me. This is a photo I took in Estero Bay. It's an oyster bar. I'm actually standing on it. But on one side, you have waves coming in. This is obviously a very scaled down version of what a storm would actually look like. It's a sunny day. But you have an oyster bar that's submerged by a few inches of water, and you have waves coming over the oyster bar, but they don't pass over it. That's effectively
That's a
what this
good
wave mitigation wall is attempting to achieve, and what it does achieve. The depth on either side is like 5 feet. I think that this answers the question a lot better than I did, so I wanted to share it.
No, I think it just solidifies what you said.
Yes.
Include that in any public discussion, that's good.
Yeah.
And maybe, some little red notes on each side so it explains what exactly you're looking at.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Are there other things, this is a little bit off topic, but are there other things we can be doing out in the water to help this? Or is that not something that you're even allowed to do?
No, there are opportunities to put, like artificial, like reef balls out there, other types of similar features. They just interfere with the access, your water, boats and things like that, so I know that
It
concept's been,
introduced
go ahead, Austin.
Say again, Austin?
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I thought Elizabeth was finished. It introduces hazards to the beach, and it changes the way that the water moves with the tides and the waves and everything. And it also might introduce features that people might consider unsightly. So that's something that could definitely be explored, but it's not something that we focused on for those reasons.
That's
There's
fine.
another critical thing, and it's how shallow the beach actually is. So if you were to provide any sort of structure like a breakwater that was strong enough to withstand these waves, it would have to probably extend well above the water line. And that's what I mean when
Yes.
I talk about things that might be unsightly or hazardous to boats and swimmers and things like that, so.
Thank you, that helps.
Yeah.
All right, thanks,
Okay.
Elizabeth. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is our CRA discussion. Will, who's starting this? Frankie?
Frankie will be starting, and I'll chime in where necessary, but yeah, Frankie will give you an update on how we're going. As you know, we have AECom who's helping us with the study as well on this, and go ahead, Frankie.
Good morning. Frankie Kropacek, Director of Community Development. As some of you know, we've started this journey a couple of years ago when we've had informal discussions on how we would look to redevelop our economic base here in the community. Primarily, when we look at that area, it's the downtown district. We're looking at Old San Carlos, we're looking at Times Square, and the maps that were handed out to you prior to the meeting, that's kind of what we're focusing on in this initial.
They're being passed down right now.
Okay, sorry. That's the area that we looked at focusing. I know that there was a rough resolution drafted to do the Times Square. This is expanding it to the whole, what we consider in the zoning world, the downtown district. And we're taking it all the way to Pearl Street to, if you look at the dotted red there, to encompass all of Diamond Head Resort as well. So we're basically corralling commercial development, and that's kind of what you see in the red. We've left out residential in this area, only because a lot of the residential, especially in the true downtown area, is still kind of hit hard after Ian. Some of those houses are still coming back, being redeveloped that way. There's no sense in including them in a condition like this. The primary goal.
Just for those watching that may not have a good memory, and I'm one of those, CRA, what is it?
So it's the Community Redevelopment Agency. That's the acronym, is CRA.
And its
And
purpose?
what the purpose is to take all the incremental tax that you would get. You had the property appraiser here, I believe, on Monday, and he's talking about that base influx, right? That base funding of what's coming in on your property and how he foresees and forecasts it. Well, when we talk about income in the town, or we talk about our taxes, we're looking at that base area. So the base goes to the county, and that gets redistributed. The increments that come upon that, the taxable increment funding, is a TIF, and that's how we formulate what stays into that CRA agency. So all the little increments, all those little bumps of increases that you would get off of the base, above the base, would stay into that agency that you would create. And that would in turn help, it basically becomes its own little SBA, right? Your own little small business administration. But you're also redirecting the growth of an area. One of the prime things that we have to do with the CRA is a finding of necessity, all right? It's a formal way of saying, hey, I've got a damaged area, and we definitely do. You know, if you look down OCS, we have basically 4 or 5 businesses that have come back after Ian. There's still a lot that are for rent, still boarded up. It's not happening. Through our own town initiative, you know, we've taken it upon ourselves to now start looking at putting our streetlights back, putting some of the paving back, the brick pavers, the flower beds that were there, those type of things. The CRA would capture all of that. It would capture a unified look. I think
The funding for all of that.
correct. And it also stand your criteria for rebuilding in that area. I think most of us all know that when we look at, you know, we stand at Bayside Veterans Park and we look towards the Gulf. Our vision is to have that as a walkable park, a drivable park. We achieved that with our birthday celebration just a couple of weeks ago. You know, when you're standing there and you look down towards Times Square, that is a park. And it happens to be our downtown, what we call our downtown area, but it's still a park. It has the visual of a park. So containing all that area within that space and redeveloping, or at least having a landscape to redevelop, that's what the CRA would really capture there as well. So what we're looking at here, again in red, are all the areas that would fall under that category of capturing that influx off the base tax rate and keeping it within that area. That area would provide for enhancements. It would provide for business redevelopment. It would have basically a tilt-down effect for small businesses trying to regenerate in that area as well. You know, we just don't have the commercial structures like the resorts, the condominiums, those type of things that are in that area, but we also have a lot of small businesses that are trying to reestablish. So by keeping that funding in that space, you're basically creating its own little microcosm for businesses to develop, redevelop, and still have a plan, a global plan of the town. You would contain your own infrastructure repair, your own infrastructure expansion within that area as well.
So where are we at in the process?
Well, we've actually done a lot in the last 2 years. So through this exercise with the CDBGR, I believe you guys know our first, Jason and I's first triumph was to get a planning grant. In that planning grant, originally the scope was committed towards helping with the comp plan. The comp plan was drafted a lot quicker than we could by the time we actually got the grant through the CDBGR and actually got AECOM in our fold. Since then, we've actually had a formal a revamp of that scope, and it's all been vetted with the CDBGR to supply us with what we desperately need, and that is a CRA study. So to get that study done, or to get a CRA, you have to have a completed study. And so they're working with us currently right now. There's a few phases that we're going to have to go through, one of which is explaining this to you today as far as what we are, the ultimate goal of this CRA would be for our community. And then also to set up the parameters to move forward with. So the findings and necessity is looking at blight, you know, and when you're looking at like an inner city, you're looking at, you know, a bombed out area where the buildings are just left to ruin, and they want to come in there and they want to revitalize. I was in Tampa over the weekend. Seems to be my place regularly on the weekends. But they had taken a lot of the area around some of the sporting venues and through commercial development or redevelopment, bought up a lot of these blocks of properties. And you see a lot more microbreweries, you see restaurants, you see a lot of nightclubs where there wasn't anything over the last year. So you're changing the dynamic, you're changing the paradigm of what is there now to what can be there. We all know that prior to Ian, our OCS, did I say that right? No, OSC, was a thriving area. You know, every little shop, every little nook and cranny, all the way through Times Square was developed. You had people all over the place. There was never a lack of anything to do, go see or drink or eat. We need to get back to that spot. So if we let it on its own demise, business sometimes doesn't always take the right spot, the right lead. And through the last 2 years in looking at this and now having a partner to help us with that study, we could possibly have all of this moving by midsummer. And that's coming to you formally with our findings of necessity. Also taking that, if approved by council, taking that up to the BOCC and having their approval and acting it in place. There's a lot of other little steps that have to be involved. After we bring the proposal to you with our study, setting up a board, those type of things. Having all that in place before we go to the BOCC. Once it's acknowledged there and granted, we could be hitting the ground running by no later than Labor Day. So we are at that spot where we could actually get this
You're
off the
saying
ground.
this Labor Day?
Yes, sir. And what we'll have along the way is a couple of informational meetings with the community. AECom is going to be supplying those type of things with the stakeholders, all the businesses that are included in this area, to bring them in here to talk to them about the benefits of how they're actually going to be able to enhance their properties, enhance their outcome by getting involved with this. So all that will be explained to the stakeholders, to the communities, and that all through this process. It's basically a win-win for the town, with us guiding the way to help people that may not know or may not realize that you can achieve something back. You know, I think at our town hall that we had the other night, somebody said, brought up the question about, oh, I thought we'd be farther along. You know, it's my ultimate goal here since I've joined the town 3 years ago to prove that we can be back a hell of a lot quicker than a lot of communities. And we have accomplished a lot in a short period of time, whether people realize it or not. There's still a lot that we can accomplish. This is one that can really set the tone. If the CRA takes off and works in the downtown area, there's no saying that you couldn't establish one at the south end of the area, the town. Those type of things. That's what a lot of communities do. They see how it reacts, and they go to develop. We currently have a little lay in the state where they're not actively going after CRAs as much as they were maybe a year or so ago. This is the time to actually start moving. We've already had preliminary talks with a couple of the members of the BOCC to kind of test the waters, and I think those meetings went rather well. They're very receptive to helping us at that level. So this is the time to act. We have the information, we have the data, we have the partner to help us with that data. And I can answer any other questions that you might have.
I have some concerns, actually. One is that any incremental tax that is generated inside that area is only to the benefit of that area, and that's a concern. We have economic development occurring in that area with, obviously, thank goodness for Margaritaville as the anchor, but private businesses like the Arches and the Lighthouse have got great plans to redevelop in a world-class fashion. And while I agree that I don't like walking down Old San Carlos and seeing buildings that have been shuttered and nothing has been done with them, I feel like that's where the economic activity is actually occurring. So I understand some of the benefits, but I feel like that's an area that's actually is developing when you look at the needs of the entire island. Where do we hear the strongest objection of lack of services? It's on the south end. So I do have some concerns. And I do understand the benefit to some of the small businesses coming back in that area, in that whole, but I'm interested in learning a lot more because.
So to your point, Counselor, it's not just about that. We're not increasing taxes. We're
No, I
not doing any of
understand.
that.
No, it's not
We're
increasing taxes.
We're
It's-
capturing the proposed increase and keeping it, and to your point, what it does is it actually sets a different dynamic. We would be able to have that CRA, that agency, be in control of architectural design.
What it does do, though, and you have to acknowledge this, is that the incremental taxes that are generated within that area are required to be spent in that area.
That is correct.
It means that perhaps the economic driver of our island, which is tourism, which is the nightlife and the, everything that we have on the north end, the rest of the island is not going to see the benefit of that.
But
Specific
I'll play devil's advocate on that a little bit. You know, obviously, you want to look at an area that is going to bring in the most incremental tax, right?
Fair.
But by doing that, that frees up actual tax dollars that can be used in other areas. So if we don't have to spend tax dollars in a CRA area, because that is being offset by the incremental tax that you take in from that area, you can then reallocate those funds to areas like that you're talking about.
No, you can't. You're not
No,
able to
you
reallocate.
can't.
Not the TIF tax, I'm talking about the normal ad valorem tax, the normal tax that we budget for. If you don't have to put into rebuilding Bayside Park if it was damaged, because you can use TIF funds for that, that's funding that you would normally have to budget for that area, that you no longer have to budget for that area, that could be used for other areas. And I'm not trying to say that's an answer, I'm just trying to say,
No,
that's, you're shifting, right? You're shifting where your allocated funds are through your budgeting process to the areas that I think you're talking about.
Infrastructure, council, is your biggest cost right here, right now. So to take the area that is the most used and primarily would be the most used over the coming months with the rebuilding of the parks, the pier, those type of things, and getting those people down there, your infrastructure, your sewer, your water, those type of things, those connections currently are coming out of plans that we develop that come out of our regular tax base. That would be all captured within that CRA. So you'd be able to do sewer work expansion, road expansion, those type of things.
Agreed, and I'm very new coming into this, so I'm just stating that I have questions, concerns, and I've got some skepticism about it. From what I understand, these are typically like decades-long agreements that you enter into, which
Yeah.
that, we're not, this isn't a short-term fix here. Our pier is coming back. As soon as the Army Corps of Engineers drops that permit, Lee County's all over that pier. It's gonna be a year before it comes back. I feel like this is a great idea that should have been done before Margaritaville was built, when that actual area was blighted, as opposed to
Yeah.
a recovery from a storm, which is what we're very successfully doing. I agree with you. There are areas where we have property owners that are, for one reason or the other, not moving the way we would like them to do, but there are plenty that are. Anyways, those are my comments. I have not made up my mind on this at all. I'm just, as I'm being introduced to this concept, I have questions.
I'll give you a quick example. I was speaking with Mayor Anderson not that long ago about some of the benefits that they've been able to do from their CRA project that they have, which we've had a lot of communication with them about how they went through their process. It's very detailed. If you get a chance to read it, it's actually really interesting. And one of the things they've been able to do is funds that they would have been spending in that CRA area, they've been able to reallocate, as I was saying earlier. And one of the programs that they've started not that long ago is they're buying up properties that are just sitting derelict. And then they're able to build homes and get homes into people, for people who can't necessarily, at much lower cost, because they don't, they're donating the land essentially. And it's a much more in-depth program than what I'm talking about, but it essentially gets people into homes and investing back into the community that normally wouldn't be able to do that. And I think they're up to 5 or 10 homes now that they've been able to
That is
build
correct, yeah.
and get to them at a rate that they can afford the mortgage, because it's a teacher or it's a policeman or a fireman that aren't making $200,000, $300,000 a year, but they're able to stay in the community that they live in and be able to afford. So that's the kind of funding that they can shift because the CRA is covering the area to build back that they don't have to put funds into. It's just one example of things that you can do.
Yeah, yesterday, I was in Bonita Springs, and you drive down Old 41, and it's, no question, it's
Yeah.
more attractive than it would have been.
Sure.
It can be very effective. My question is it the right place, the right time to do this? Honestly, and like I said, I'm not objecting to it. I have questions
Well,
about it.
it's our duty to show you what we have, to lay our cards out on the table and explain to what
Yep.
the conclusions that we came with and how we got there. And we will definitely be doing that in the days that come as well.
I think it's important, since we're kind of on that topic of the funds and how they might be used, to talk about the governance of this a little bit, Frankie. So once approved, if it is approved in the future, the council would then be responsible for appointing a director and a board that would then manage that CRA, reporting to the council on how and determine how they're going to utilize those funds, and everything within. Frankie, you can talk a little bit more about that, because we've talked with some of the others who've said.
Sure. City of Cape Coral is a good example. I lived there, but, when we moved there 10 years ago, that whole 47th Street area where a lot of the popular restaurants are and things like that off of the Cape Coral Parkway area, they were nothing. It wasn't being utilized properly. The town had already moved, and Cape Coral calls it its downtown, but Cape Coral is also 200,000 people, so it's spread out. And that's kind of was a forgotten wasteland, and they wanted to try to revitalize it. So they created a CRA for the downtown district, and it did revitalize it. And the funds are kept there for sidewalk repairs, for lighting, for all those types of things. Tourism had increased almost 43% since that project kicked off. Now, we know that the pier is going to bring tons of people. We know that right after the storm, we had basically the 3 restaurants up on the north end, and, now that they opened up another one there on 3rd Street, and so on and so forth down the road. But we still have a long way to go. We have a lagoon in that back area off of Mr. Richard's property that could be used. We talk about expanding the town. You brought up a good point with Arches possibly breaking ground sometime. Water taxi, we talk about all those type of things where we can bring people into the area. The CRA can take care of that. The CRA can help with that lagoon area and have a place for a water taxi to come in. A CRA can help develop and have the funds to dredge that canal to allow a water taxi to come in. So you're right, those funds stay there, but those funds work for you over and over again. And to the mayor's point, what Mayor Anderson did is after Milton, they put up those tiger dams in front of all the businesses. Their businesses were up and running within days, not weeks, not months. That money, those people that come there to use those restaurants and those businesses weren't put out. They were there. They were there the next couple of days. It's so vital to us when you come over that bridge to have that area intact, not just for the view, but for the businesses that are there. You mentioned the lighthouse. You mentioned the Arches in Margaritaville. If we ever have a place like we got done with Ms. Fountain's presentation, the ability to be able to bounce back quicker, not having to look for other funds, those funds would be intact to help those businesses. Resilient, we're talking about a mitigation wall. Those things can be done with funding through the CRA for those businesses in that area. So there's a lot of things that we can reach out that would help not only those businesses, but also reflect on the town as a whole. When people come over the bridge, they just don't stop there. They go down. Sorry, I'm one-handed these days. They go down the entire island. And to your point, the south end, yes, desperately needs something too. We're holding on to Santini, but we're also holding on to a marina that's in the process of redevelopment. We're also bringing more restaurants down to that area. Regardless of what happens here, we know that that's going to get to that point eventually. This would be the starting point, that first stepping stone across that creek, then Mid-Island, then South Island. And we would have a complete economic base from tip to tip. And I guess that was the vision 2 years ago. It's even more so now, but we can definitely explain how we've got to those conclusions and show you our path.
I'm right. Oh,
Do you mind if I go?
no, I don't.
Just as a follow-up, so that CRA, once it's established, that board would, if you add the South End or Mid-Island, it'd still be the same board that would, or it would be a different?
So what would have to be done is you would have to ask for another CRA or a TIF area to be established in those areas. But yes, once that board is established, they could oversee the entire island.
Because that's how Fort Myers is, right? They've got
They have the
downtown
downtown,
district, they've got
right.
Harlem Heights, they've
Yep,
got, but
yes.
it's the same board that controls
Yes.
all those different areas.
Yes.
So,
Yes, I believe it is.
okay, just want to clarify that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try to stay calm. I think CRAs can be wonderful. This is not, none of this is personal. I think CRAs can be wonderful. Let's not forget, we live on a 7-mile barrier island. We are not Fort Myers, but we understand how Fort Myers operated. For the public's understanding, we're talking about increase in property tax, so we're at a base. Increase in property tax would go to, I would give them the analogy of like a 429. If you have kids in, little kids and you want to save for their college, you're putting that money into a CRA trust, and you're saying, we can only use it, for our kids' college. There's guidelines around it. But what you are saying as a family is, if we need a new car, we can't take that money and use it. We're doing the same thing for the town, right? We put that increased tax base in the trust. That doesn't go to the town's general fund, which then, Will and council all figure out what our priorities are today. So we give up some things to get that advantage.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I think we just need to make sure everyone understands what you're balancing. It's not free money. It's redirecting money and putting criteria around it first. My next question would be, I would be interested in deciding how we came up with the area, and could the CRA be the whole island? I'm not sure. We could probably call our whole island kind of blight from the hurricane. I just put that out there. I am with John 100%. I do not believe the CRA money should be focused on the downtown area. I think they're doing great. Every time we look at new projects coming up, we are thinking about infrastructure and how can our island support, big projects like London Bay, Seagate. We'd be stuck with, sorry, we can't help your infrastructure down here that may have been, affected by it, because we can only use this money up in Times Square. Again, then I would add some more things to it that say, I want to make sure that we're supporting a year-round community here, Frankie. That is why I'm sitting here. We love our tourists. I mean, this was the most exciting season, but we also have a fair amount of people who live here. So I want to make sure that any CRA activity is linked to our comprehensive plan at the same weight we give all those different things. Residents, would benefit from the CRA, not just tourism and helping our tourist support, pretty much like what John is saying. Again, I'd like to see what incentives you have, what things you're looking for to do in the CRA. I like the buying back of property, maybe some more parks, again, fixing our infrastructure, maybe some workforce housing, but I want to know what the public, the people who live here, benefit from that CRA. So I think that they can shape our island for decades to come. It's a long-term investment, and so I just want to make sure we are tying that to the comprehensive plan. Then the one last thing I would say is, when I was doing my research, I found that the boards in most places are the council, because we sit here to represent the people. We're not giving that up to someone else to decide and then kind of come to us and ask if it's okay. So I would like to consider that the town council, whoever they be, voted in over the next, few decades. Those are the people who sit on that board, like other communities. Just some thoughts and recommendations.
My understanding was the boards were advisory council, similar to the TDC, but the council would be the ultimate decision makers based on recommendations. That the board doesn't make the recommendation, or doesn't make the final decision, they make the recommendation to the council to make the ultimate decision. That's my understanding of
That
how
is
the
correct.
boards work.
That is correct. That's the way it works in Cape Coral. That's the way it basically works in Fort Myers as well. The district controls the district and gets the asks in that district, the agency does, but then they go to the town and say, these are the asks within our bubble here, our little dome. Do you approve or disapprove? Those type of things.
My fear is that a lot of work could be done up front before it comes to us to be like, you're not aligned with the comprehensive plan, or you're not aligned with the vision. So maybe we find a hybrid, so that you're not spinning a lot of wheels on something that you come here and then we say no. So maybe projects or topics or things that we'd like to gear the CRA funds towards, and then they go back to this group, whoever they are, to focus on those areas, and then come back for approval.
So I can just add, there are variations. CRAs exist throughout the state of Florida. Generally, Councilwoman Link is correct. Typically, it is the governing body, but there are some variations of that that could be discussed. They always say the devil's in the details, and that's where I earn my money, right? But associated with the creation of a CRA is the adoption of a CRA plan. And any expenditures that the CRA accumulates through its trust can only be spent in accordance with the projects that are identified in that plan.
Right.
And that is a big area of dispute and legal issues associated with that. So I'm really impressed with Frankie. Labor Day, again, the devil's in the details. There is some specific process that has to be followed that is statutory, and we do have to adhere to each one of those criterias and processes. There's noticing requirements, there's the adoption of resolutions, which we can do. I'm not being a naysayer here, but I'm just cautioning that there's a lot that goes into it. The CRA does function as an independent, a dependent special district, so it is
Right.
another legal entity that is created. Its creation and demise is dependent on the town council itself. And I can talk about this at nauseum, and I don't want to make you guys listen to it, but I'm happy to work with Frankie and the manager and get all the bottom line things in place. But the first challenge is really to get that finding of necessity study done. And once that's done and it's reviewed, then we could start setting it up to addressing all the criteria that's in the statute.
I agree with that. And Nancy, I love to live in the details as well. That's how I make my living. I just, again, want to make sure we are tying to our comprehensive plan and that we are in alignment with the strategic plan that we're doing as well. Not that we have go in one direction in one plan and a different direction in our strategic plan. So if we just keep all those pieces together, that would make me feel good.
In regards to the strategic plan, there is an objective and an action item for the redevelopment of the town of Fort Myers Beach that includes the opportunity to do a study to see if the findings of necessity meets that criteria to move forward with the CRA if it's worthwhile and the council agrees to that action.
Is there any type of timeline on when that study, the conclusion of the finding of necessity study would be done?
So the finding of necessities, the draft was already done. It's going to wait until after our discussion here today, and then within the next week, it's going to be sent to AECom for review and start collaboration on that. And we should have that to you hopefully by the end of May meeting.
Okay, so I'd like to get a copy of it and take a look at it to make sure that we are following the procedure that's in statute, and then we can seamlessly proceed forward with it.
Yes.
Seems reasonable. Anything else, Rebecca?
No, but thank you, Frankie. I'm sure you understand. I'm
Yes,
looking
ma'am.
at it holistically.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I understand your concerns. If you look at Fort Myers website with their CRA, it's not just businesses. It's infrastructure, it's residential grant programs, it's commercial grant programs, it's public arts, it's affordable housing, and but I agree with you, if we do this, we can't just be hyper-focused on, we're just gonna make this area, and business is gonna boom. It's got to be a whole comprehensive package. But that CRA enables you to do that, and if we can get that wave mitigation wall as a piece of that, that's gonna be huge.
But that would have to be kind of, maybe more broad, so not just Times Square,
Well, I mean, it's all the way from Diamond Head all the way down, so
Right.
it's a large area, but to Frankie's point, that would be the first step. And then the second step is you identify another area of the island that needs a kickstart, that needs some help, that can go. I mean, this is, to your point, it's gonna be a 20, 30-year process. I mean, Fort Myers, CRA has been in existence since the 80s, right?
Believe so, in some form or fashion
Yeah.
it has, yes.
So,
it's just a vehicle for where funds go. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're
No.
not pulling funds that we give Will away and,
Yeah,
what we
no,
have to
that's a
live
good
with. Things that may go to the general fund that we need, or just want to make sure everybody understands what we get for it, what we're giving up in return, and.
But
everyone
to
has
the
a
mayor's
chance
point
to
as well,
participate.
Councilwoman, is it actually would help those funds that the town has to use in other areas. It would free up some of those funds that would have been earmarked for tearing up the streets and like on Third Street and putting in new storm sewer, those type of things, would now be recaptured by that area.
Okay, and I would want to see specifics. If
Yes, ma'am.
This, we could use that, yeah,
Yep.
I'm not suggesting.
And that's what's included in
hyperbole.
the scope. Just like the counselor said, we need to have all that pertinent information in there. It is a requirement, and so it's like a wish list, right? When you're drafting this, every possible thing that we can contain in there and that can be reached within a reasonable amount, that's kind of what we had put in there. So yes, ma'am.
So are you thinking maybe this is just a coincidence that the CRA discussion and the wave mitigation engineering study came together? Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not, but has that been some of the thinking before I joined? That may be a great use for it, because
Yeah.
I can see where that support is there, and
Well,
I can
that's-
maybe even buy into that. Is
That's
that
kind of
what
a.
you're looking for?
It's a complex answer. So
Sure.
the talk of mitigation wall came long before the storm, back when Grand Resorts was proposing doing it for the town at their cost. So that technically was the chicken before the egg, right? And the egg was Ian.
Yeah.
And that's when the mitigation wall, then we talk about CRAs since almost the day after the storm. So that talk started. So technically, the mitigation talk came first, then the CRA, and now the mitigation is coming back into play after the initial discussions of the CRA. So they're kind of intertwined. It wasn't one because of the other.
Right, but are you thinking that that would be a good use for the
Oh,
CRA funds?
certainly, I think it would be one
I
of
mean,
the.
is that kind of what you have in mind?
Yeah, and to the mayor's point, a good point to that was we're stuck with Times Square, right? Here we're stuck with an L and nothing around it. And we know that we don't want the trailers. We know we don't want this. We are actively looking for developers to come in there and put a brick and mortar place back in. Well, the town's got to step up too. You know, those little brick pavers, I can't tell you, the three of us here have shoveled sand and pavers many times after every storm. So the thought came not too long ago, well, let's do away with that. FEMA would love us if we did away with the brick pavers. Well, how will we go about doing that? Well, we come in with like a decorative concrete surface throughout Times Square. You know, and then, okay, if you build back, what are you going to do then? You know, here the town's investing all this money. Well, then you proportionately charge whatever their footage is for the cost of us putting in the concrete in front of those things. Well, under that concrete, we know that the sewer has to be replaced, the potable water lines have to be replaced, the electrical is, we still can't find half of the electrical connections in Times Square. So those type of things were talked about then. not that it's an easy fix, because it's going to take a little time too, if the CRA was established, but those things would be contained in there. It would be self-contained. And there would be monies and time that the town didn't spend there to put into
But
other
aren't some of
areas.
those developers already have an opportunity to do their own mitigation wall? As maybe some of that is the public benefit that, they can offer us. We have London Bay or the Outrigger, and they're saying, I'm already studying to do the wave mitigation wall. So to make sure that we're using our money where we need it and let the developers, that's their part maybe of kicking in.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I made my case, but thank you for listening. Thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
Frankie.
Scott, anything else?
No.
John?
Good discussion, thank you. John, I can understand where you're coming from. First thing I thought when I saw this map was, it's just the opposite of NIMBY. It's not in my neighborhood, but why is it not in my neighborhood? So that helps. Mayor, thank you for what you added to that discussion as well. That helps balance some things, I think, as well. Councilor McLean, I'm not sure why the previous councils didn't do something about this, but we've been trying to get this going for at least a couple of years now, as Frankie has said. So I think we have to start somewhere and then look at the big picture. And rightly or wrongly, as someone that sits at the south end of a bridge, all I ever hear is about a bridge when there are two in this town. But the focus for a lot of folks, rightly or wrongly, is on the north end and the Times Square and Old San Carlos area. So thanks for all of this information and this discussion.
Yeah, I think the other thing we have to realize too is last year, we almost had a gun to our head. They were gonna change the law, and we couldn't.
They were going to do away with them.
Yeah.
Well, 2 years,
They were-
actually.
Yeah, 2 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 years ago. So we were looking at doing this 2 years ago, but it would have been rushed. I think it wouldn't have been right. And now we've got the opportunity here with this pause that we can actually get it done and do it right.
Plan it and think about it.
Scott, I want to be super clear, because I hope I was at the outset. I'm not in opposition
No,
of
no,
this.
I-
I
no,
just
I-
have
I-
a lot of
Same here.
questions
No,
around.
and that's why
the
we did
plan.
this, so you guys would
Yeah.
get an understanding. But based on that history, 2 years ago, we might have done this and might have done it wrong.
Yeah.
So now we've got the opportunity to do it right.
Yeah, no, I'm all for seeing what is coming.
Sure.
I do
thinking
have a
that's
couple
good.
of concerns.
No, you
Let's
wanna
go.
Long-term.
Our constituents have concerns, that a lot of people, it's a new area that we're diving into, so it's good that we have this discussion.
And I'm glad we're doing it correctly, following the right rules, ensuring that we've got experts that, for example, I was so impressed with the J.R. Evans.
Sure.
I mean, expertise is important in doing any of these sorts of things. I certainly appreciate that it's being done correctly, and I'm very much interested and engaged in learning as it goes forward. That's where I stand.
John?
That took care of what I had. Thanks.
Yeah, the only thing I really have to add is, there's a lot of discussion about, we're forgetting a major key part of this, that this has to be signed off on by the BOCC. So you have to have a very good plan in place. I can tell you, in having conversations with them 2 years ago, there was really not an appetite for doing this, because they will lose money at the county level, right? So at the time, right after the storm, much like we're not sure where we're gonna be, nor were they. So there was a lot of reluctance. I think now we've got a little bit more buy-in as to what we're trying to do here. Maybe that's part of the reason why the downtown district was picked, because there are some of the entities that the county owns around that area, to help maybe get some buy-in to be able to approve this, because again, at the end of the day, they have to ultimately approve it. So having that plan in place, I think I agree with Scott. The fact that, we had a little pressure from the state about potentially getting rid of it because people were misusing funds on the other coast, which started the legislature down the process of, well, these maybe aren't the best thing because people are putting concerts on with money, right? So that's not the intent of a CRA. But calmer waters prevailed, and I think now that we have time to actually go through it, see the study, to Nancy's point, make sure the procedure and the process is right, when we get something that we can ultimately vote on, we know we're confident that we followed all the rules, and we know where that money's going to go, and what we could potentially do with other funds to be allocated somewhere else because of these funds that could be coming in, and have the projections of what are we really looking at as far as money coming in, and how does that mean with, keeping our infrastructure, which is the most important part, right? And that's where the infrastructure for the island starts, is on the downtown zoning district. That's where it all comes in. That's where the water, that's where the electric, that's where everything comes in. So that is kind of the benefit of the entire island, to be able to make sure that's maintained. So I'm glad we're at this point. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to where we can have something tangible to discuss and give direction to staff to be able to say, bring this back so we can vote on it, get it to the BOCC, and then all of us can start advocating to the county level to say, this is what we needed, this is why we need it, here's what we're gonna do with it, and here's how you're gonna benefit, we're gonna benefit. It's not just about the town of Fort Myers Beach. All of Lee County comes down here to use this island. So as long as everybody's benefiting, I think we'll have a better argument to be able to get them to buy in. So keep up the good work, and
Thank you.
hopefully soon we'll be able to discuss a little more detail.
Thank you, sir.
Will, anything else you want to add to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly why we wanted to bring this forward. Our first time is to get some direction, some guidance from the council. Let us go, we can refine, make those adjustments, and then get some stuff to Nancy to review and come back for another shot in the near future.
Perfect.
Perfect, yeah. Thanks, Frankie, for
If
all
I
the
make
work.
just one more comment, none of this would be possible without Jason Freeman. He's been the person making sure that we have AECom in line, that we have those discussions, that we have those weekly talks. So it's easy for me to sit up here and talk about my little dream and what I put together, but it doesn't come to fruition without his hard work. So he should be recognized
Oh, yeah.
for all of
The
this.
original Swiss Army knife.
There you go.
Yeah,
Our own Marco Rubio.
very young.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, our last is agenda management. John, you have anything you want to add to agenda management? John
Nothing.
McLean?
Oh, sorry.
Huh?
I said, sorry, you said John.
Oh.
I'm ready to pounce, baby.
I brought it up during council that we have an open position at the Anchorage. I'd like to see that brought forward. That's it for me, though. Thank
Okay.
you.
Rebecca?
Short-term rentals. And how we are using the new technology. You had mentioned something, Mayor, about technology where we can see who's signed up, who's following the rules, how we can increase our revenue stream by that. Just maybe a discussion, a demo.
That's a good idea. Maybe a presentation at an M&P meeting from our consultant, or from our firm that we've hired, so they can explain better probably than we can of how it works, so that the public can see.
When we'll start to benefit from that, and
Because I think once you see how it works and why it works, I think you'll understand why the staff went down the road of making sure.
recommending it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Scott?
I've got nothing for agenda management, but just want to let you guys know that we had our final Charter Review Committee meeting yesterday, and Mr. Dunlap's going to present to us at our next meeting, and we actually have 5 items that they are going to recommend for our charter change. Nothing major, but he'll be presenting that at our next meeting, so,
On the 20th.
on the 20th, yes.
Those were great meetings, too.
Yeah, they were. It was, and, it was our last meeting yesterday, and it took 20 minutes because of all the previous work they've done. I mean, they went through that charter sentence by sentence.
Yeah.
So
I think if you want to see your community at work,
Yeah.
watching those
they
charter
did-
review was
they
a
did a
good one.
fantastic job. So just,
Your role as well, Scott. Thank
thanks.
you.
That was a pleasure. It was a great team to work with. But as far as management and planning, I don't have anything additional.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Nothing on management and planning calendar. I was just ready to jump and let you know I wasn't ready to, I didn't have anything.
All right, yeah, I
there.
don't have anything additional to add. One of the item I see is, looks like it's finally coming up on some discussion next month. All right, there's nothing else, John?
Mayor?
Oh, yep, hold on.
There is one thing. As you recall, this past week, you appointed Ed Schoonover to the local planning agency, to the LPA. And as a result, there was a vacancy now created. Well, he resigned basically yesterday because he did serve on other committees, and we had not presented a waiver to allow him to serve on multiple committees. So yesterday, the town clerk, she did receive a letter of resignation from him from the other two committees, which are,
Anchorage Advisory and BORCAB, and then the Charter Commission.
so what we would ask is that you go ahead and allow the town clerk to advertise those vacancies. And there's no prohibition to Mr. Schoonover to apply, to reapplying. However, because of his participation on multiple committees and in the view of the lack of the waiver, we feel this is the best course of action, and he agreed to do it.
I don't think we need to replace him on charter review. We have 2 alternates already, so I think that's,
Charter review,
we're
just
probably
for-
not gonna have another meeting. so
Exactly.
I don't think we need.
So charter review would be terminated officially on April the 20th.
Okay,
However, just for the record, he went ahead and just
okay. But
basically
we don't need to
resigned.
replace him because we already
No,
have.
no, because that
2
committee,
alternates.
but that will be terminated
Anyways.
completely
Yeah.
on the 20th.
Okay, thank you.
So if we could just have that direction.
Yeah, so directed. Anybody have any objection to it?
None.
Will has something.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can just, I have a clarification for the agenda. So May 7th, M&P will be, it says Leadership Forum Strategic Planning. It's really just an M&P for the council to participate in the strategic planning. Tracy, you want to let them know exactly what?
Wow, that was my microphone that did that.
Go ahead.
You can use Will's.
So yes, during our regular M&P meeting on May 7th, we will, besides the bike conversation, which will go first, we will venture into a strategic planning session. I anticipate it, well, I guess depending on how long the bike conversation goes, potentially ending around 1 PM.
Okay.
Any questions about that strategic planning session?
Look forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
So they're both the same day. The normal M&P will be first, followed by the second M&P, I guess is what we call
Yeah, I guess so, right?
it? Okay.
Yeah, we won't have a separation to make it a full-day event.
Okay. We won't have a separation, or we will? We'll just roll
Meaning
right
it,
into
as it's in the agenda management, it says 12:30 to 4:30. It won't be that whole day.
Normal M&P time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not 12:30.
Hopefully, that's a good piece of news for you.
Sounds good. Okay.
Must have been your magnetic and electric personality that caused that interference, but I think we all need to be in cahoots as we adjourn this meeting.
All right. We are adjourned at 11:22.